All right, friends, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the ingress of Uranus back into the sign of Taurus. It will be there for about 6 months in its late degrees before it leaves the sign once and for all next spring. And for most of us who are past the age of, let's say, 30, this is the last time we're going to see Uranus in Taurus. And you know what? This is not just some backward motion, especially with these outer planets. They're always talking about some kind of an existential correction. It's our return back to our bodies after having the minds gone wild for the past few months. It's going to be one final shock that's going to remind us whatever that's happening up here, Gemini, right? The cerebral aspect of our lives, our thinking process, our technologies, they have to be rooted and grounded in the material. So in this video, we're going to explore why Uranus needs to go back. We need to see what unfinished revolutions still remain in the sign of Taurus, and how this final passage is also a kind of a liberation from the project that it began all the way back in 2018. This is its final completion. And I will come back to do another video about Uranus's next ingress into the sign of Gemini, where it's going to stay there when we get there. And I do have another video about Uranus's first ingress into the sign of Gemini. I'll put the link to that video in the description box below. And if you want to be notified of the new videos coming up, please do subscribe and YouTube will send you a notification. With all of that out of the way, now let's get into the core of what this transit means. So in this retrograde, when we talk about it, we have to remember where Uranus is coming back from, which was into the sign of Gemini. So in a lot of ways, from an individual perspective and the collective perspective, everything started to speed up. Information multiplied, technologies accelerated, at least how we use them to convey information. And naturally, our attention got scattered. And in general, we just could say that cerebral components, the general ideas that we were generating, outpaced what it means to be embodied. We can say that Uranus is looking back now, or through that retrograde motion, is asking itself, can the system that I just awakened actually sustain the voltage? And by going back to the sign of Taurus is where Uranus can ground this experiment. This is kind of like saying, when lightning becomes too diffuse in the air, it must strike the earth again, and not to destroy it, but to complete the circuits. We need to go back to understand how this continuity between Taurus and Gemini can be functional. So this is kind of like an energetic descent back into matter, from theory back into the texture and the realness of life, the material aspects of it, that earth component of the sign of Taurus. Like Uranus will be reminding us, you can intellectualize a revolution, but the revolution requires real bodies to be realized, to be sustained, and to go somewhere that it's fruitful. And when we look back to when Uranus moved into the sign of Taurus in 2018, it was 7 years of disruption in that domain. And that included our economy, to our food system, to the climate, and to the things that we actually need and the things that we possess. What Uranus essentially disrupted was our sense of security and safety, the way that we're anchored into our life. But this final passage is different. It's not about, I'm going to revolutionize you through massive disturbances and shakeups. This time is about integration, but we're still talking about Uranus. So it's going to come through instability, but it's what we can handle. That's why I'm saying it's about integration. And we got to remember Uranus is only treading the waters or the earth of Taurus in its last degrees. And we got to remember planets in their last degrees in a sign or representing a kind of a maturity. So it's looking for a synthesis and a sense of wholeness in its lessons. But Uranus is going to shake the crust that still resists the kind of consciousness that Uranus wants from us. For example, when we still sit and we look at the things that we refuse to change related to the sign of Taurus, related to the house where Taurus is sitting in your chart, the way that we want to hold on to our sense of stability and comfort about certain things, our routines, material security, all of them are again under review. Like the early years of Uranus and the sign of Taurus was about ripping every sense of false safety that we had. But it's not like we as human beings, someone rips our sense of safety and security and we just linger in the mid-air of uncertainty. Right away, we start testing new things to reestablish that sense of security. So now Uranus is going back. It's going to be like these things that you put back into place, are they alive enough? Are they flexible enough? Can they actually survive what I'm going to be doing in the sign of Gemini, an air sign, about flexibility and movement? Are you agile enough? It wants to know that we're responsive and awake. And anything that doesn't correspond to where Uranus is wanting to go after this is going to come under scrutiny. That's where the shakeup's happening. So some of us will feel this as the tremor within our finances, in how we keep the balance of our bodies. And since Taurus is a feminine sign, it will touch our emotional foundations also. But these final shakeups of Uranus are about testing the feedback loop of our lives. It's not at all like what it was doing the first time around. So Uranus is going to be constantly asking us in the next few months, is what you call stability actually stability and growth, or just stagnation in disguise? Because a lot of times we just get into routines, like a horse, I guess in this case, a bull with its blindfolders on, and just keep going. What Uranus is going to do, kick us to the side, get us off track. Do you know how to go back? Do you know how to recalibrate, rebalance yourself to feel stable, safe, and secure? And I think it would help to just take a second to talk about the nature or the environment of Taurus, so that we'll understand how this Uranian language can be translated here. One of the first ways that we can define Taurus, we can look at it as a field of incarnation. It's the meeting place between spirit and matter. It governs how energy condenses into form, and how awareness and consciousness is able to inject itself into the physical plane. And when Uranus entered Taurus in 2018, it began to electrify that condensation. And in a lot of ways, it was teaching our consciousness what it means to be embodied by the material and the form, but not to be its prisoner. So in some ways, this return is a test of that embodiment. And after years of shakeup by Uranus, our nervous system has become rewired. Like when I look at myself, I think different. I consume different. I have a different definition of what security is, material security is. And because I had to go through so many jolts and so many up and downs in the past 7 years. So my nervous system has become rewired. And sometimes you think you're rewiring, it's because you went through so many harsh and hard, difficult things. You think it's entrenched, you think it's in place until you get another shakeup. And then you'll see how fast your peace gets disturbed. So this is like Uranus going back, that stress test that it's trying to do, the feedback loop, the information that it's trying to get about how efficient the system has become. It's as if it's going to ask us, can this new awareness that you gained remain in place despite other shakeups that are going to come up? Can you stay still inside of your peace? Do you know how to still feel safe and secure? This retrograde is pulling us back to finish this alchemical process within ourselves, because when we go into the sign of Gemini, this is Mercury's sign. Mercury represents the nervous system. It's representing things moving at a very rapid pace, whereas in the sign of Taurus, we want to be static. The negative interpretation of it is lethargy, inertia, lack of flexibility. So Uranus going back there, it's for us to see, have we created enough stability to withstand what's coming up, A? And B, do we have what it takes to still know how to remain calm, resolute, stand still while things are changing rapidly? And we can also look at this from a psychological perspective as to what's the purpose of this? What can we do with this? Basically, it's telling us the necessity of going back to be able to master things that are unmastered. And one of the biggest fears of the sign of Taurus, its shadow, is the fear of loss, of scarcity, the need to cling to comfort. And all of these facets prevent our evolution and our growth. Like the sign of Taurus doesn't necessarily want to risk things, but sometimes we need to risk things to know more, to get more, to see more places. It's almost as if the shadow of Taurus would say, if this thing changes, I will die. It will be that extreme towards change. And its shadow is that it can kill the thing that it's coming forth, and it might be an opportunity, but it will destroy it because it doesn't want to relinquish its own comfort and its own present sense of security. When the sign of Taurus has it's not functioning properly, you'll see the natives of the sign who are kind of stunted in their growth. They go through the same patterns every day, do the same things, just habituate it, even if it's not good for them, even though it's shrinking their life and their sense of being. So when Uranus is going back, it's going to expose this shadow. It's going to show how it's still part of our nervous system configuration. So it's going to go back and it's like, you didn't learn anything in the past 7 years. I've been just keep shaking things up. So you snap the hell out of it. But now I've been gone for just a few months and you have reverted back to your comfort zone. Hell no, like I can't go into the sign of Gemini and survive with you still being here. So this is Uranus doing that one last push, and it's going to destabilize us where we're clinging on to the shadow aspect. Like Uranus right now needs us to learn what it means to trust and to be able to move based on that trust rather than wanting to exert massive amounts of control. Like it's keep whispering in our ear, security comes from adaptability. So we have to learn how to roll with the punches. That means Uranus is going to be throwing some punches. And to put this in practical, real language of how we live our lives, like just because you feel shook, it doesn't mean you have to act in that moment. This is something that's also important to remember. So if you're shook, don't run into the rebuilding process right away too. We have a few months. Take a moment, observe, see what instability has come about. And that instability is revealing a lot. Like the way that you feel shook and unhinged is showing you where you have unhealthy attachments. It's very important to understand that, to be able to change something long term. And in general, Uranus is going to be showing us, or it's going to unhook our consciousness from the illusion that matter and certain components of our lives has to remain the same. And they have to remain the same so that life feels safe. I mean, this is just like training grounds. This is what it feels like. Uranus is coming back, train us a little bit more before we go back into the sign of Gemini. It's almost as if we went there and it's like, wow, these are a bunch of slow athletes. They're not primed. They're not conditioned. Like, what the hell are they doing? I need to go back and break some old habits. Like boxing trainers, they always say it's better to get a complete rookie and a new boxer than a seasoned one to train them. Because the one who's been training a long time to have bad habits, that's almost impossible to break. But when you get them young, untrained, unexperienced, you can actually instill the right things. So Uranus was like, dude, I actually need to go back and retrain this person, these people, these societies. And talking about societies, let's just very briefly go through some of the collective themes. So we can expect a little bit more shakeup of the Taurian systems, such as markets adjusting again, redefining of currencies, food chain getting affected, land usage facing another wave of crisis. And we can think of these as closing tremors. And all of it, again, is meant to finalize what Uranus began in 2018. In many respects, we are completing the revolution of values. And there's something very profound that we have to understand. Like, look at technology and AI right now. We have to understand what it means to go from ownership to stewardship, from extraction to regeneration, from consumption to participation. So we can see that movement from Taurus to Gemini. And these transitions or these disturbances that Uranus is causing, we can feel it in our body as somatic overload and exhaustion. And one of the cure for this is going to be reconnecting back to the most basic rhythms necessary for life, such as sleep, nourishment, touch, going into nature. And that's because no matter how much Uranus is trying to recondition our nervous system, or how much we have tried to rewire it, the nervous system essentially is able to integrate by grounding in the sensory fields, which is Taurus. And this is something that we need to practice now in the next 6 months and make it part of our nervous system. It's going to be super important when Uranus permanently moves into the sign of Gemini for a number of years. We need to know how to come back to ourselves, to ground ourselves, to be in the body. I know everyone's trying to escape the body, but going somewhere without the body, not pleasant as a human being while you're still alive. And the deeper message here is, beyond all jokes, before consciousness can expand itself into that Gemini speed, humanity actually needs to re-sanctify slowness a little bit. We need to understand where the hell we're going also. Again, coming back to technologies, the innovations, the expansions, like everyone's just growing at insane speed. Just because you can go, just because you can do, just because you can innovate, you should. But technology is not value free. It's not just going to end up somewhere good. We have to direct it. So we also need to slow down here right now. Maybe this is a blessing for Uranus to go back and for us to be like, wait a minute. Like, where the hell am I running to? Because acceleration without embodiment is often its destination, it's self-destruction. So this is kind of like buying time right now too. So with all of that said, I'm just going to make a few pointers very quickly in terms of how we can integrate personal integration and directives here. How do we cope? How do we deal with this energy going back into the sign of Taurus? How do we work with this consciously? Point number one, we have to restabilize what is alive. And that means if something's trying to solidify out of fear, it will crack again. So we're going back to the old habits out of fear. We're getting comfortable the way we used to out of fear. It's going through a feedback loop that's going to give a negative feedback from Uranus. So understand and discern what breathes, what's alive, what can move into the sign of Gemini, and understand what is trying to calcify, slow you down, and hold you back. Point number two, tend to the body, because our bodies are a technology. Uranus represents technology. So what's the first thing that Uranus is going to touch or seek to update? It's going to be our bodies. So it's very important for us in the next few months to find grounding practices. For instance, for some of us, it's good to eat. I think for all of us, trying to be generous here, but eat what comes from earth. Take moments of rest. Let stillness and rest resets your energy level and your movements. Point number three, audit your relationships for their true value. Ask yourself, what do I truly need? What have I outgrown? The sign of Taurus does govern worth. That sense of opulence, abundance that's here are things that are useful. That means things that are worthy, things that are life generating. So some of this retrograde has to do with understanding what still holds value and worth in our life. If there are a lot of excesses, you can't take it into the sign of Gemini. It doesn't accommodate it. So you're just going to be burdened, held back. These are the things to keep in mind. Another thing that I would say that's helpful is to cultivate silence. And I say this because the return of Uranus into the sign of Gemini. I do this in every video. Somehow I make up words. In Farsi, we have that too. Like, we'll rhyme a word with some nonsensical word, like chair and mare, cup and bup. I just did that with Gemini. But going back to what I was saying, the sign of Uranus and the sign of Gemini can create a lot of noise. And we have already seen this. Like, if you've been on social media, if you've been watching the news, even being outside in traffic, there's just a sense of noisiness that wasn't there before. So to cultivate silence is that when Uranus is in the sign of Gemini, the proper habituation of the things that we need to have as ritual are now in place. So we can invite quietude so that we can ground ourselves when Uranus is out of here. And if you think about it, it's usually silence and that groundedness that comes with it that allows us to take deeper roots into our own lives. That's how new awareness comes about. And believe me, we need to be pretty aware when Uranus is back there and we have Pluto in Aquarius and Neptune in Aries. Things are going to go through society and our individual lives in many ways too. We're going to go through rapid shifts. And people think shift and change is good because their life has felt stagnant now for a few years. But if you can't keep up with the change, that just means disintegration and just getting demolished. And lastly, I want to say another thing that we have to start understanding is that we need to start trusting discomfort. And sometimes the ground shaking beneath us, it doesn't mean things are falling apart. It means, yes, the roots are being agitated because the ground's being shook, but it's not about collapsing again with this Uranus going back. It might mean that this shaking up is loosening the earth that's been compacted and clogged and not allowing oxygen to get into the roots. Maybe it's just opening some spaces for us to actually readjust something revitalize some things so that when Uranus stations and goes direct in May 2026, the soil of our life can take the pollination that's going to come from the sign of Gemini to be more conducive to life, healthy forms of life. And you know what? Maybe after 7 years of Uranus in Taurus, the earth itself is getting an opportunity to breathe or to breathe differently. And I would say one of the things that Uranus has done in the sign of Taurus is to actually liberate our consciousness from form and yet teach it how it can remain and live in form, not to be bound and imprisoned by it. And I'm going to start closing the video now. And as always, thank you for being here. I absolutely appreciate your participation. And as Uranus makes more aspects, I'll make more videos. And I'd love to know you guys' experience of how this is unfolding in your charts. Let me know which house it's sitting in and how it pertains to that house. As astrologers, we need to do research, especially with these 3 modern planets. We need more data. So please do remember to comment, like, and subscribe. And if you want your own chart reading, you can go to the link in the description box below or to parisayazi.com. I have all the information there. And I'll leave you with this. My hope for all of us through this transit is to finally find our peace in places that's just been shook and disturbed for the past 7 years. But also remember how every disturbance was actually teaching our body to trust movement, and movement is the nature of life. And that the way it made us feel uncertain was just simply energy learning a new rhythm of how to be in the body and in the material life. And I hope this last transit of Uranus through Taurus helps us reclaim our ground, and not as something fixed, but as something that's alive and breathing, fertile, abundant, and opulent. And I hope that we see that awareness doesn't end when form changes, because everything has changed with Uranus and Taurus, but it actually deepens it and allows the roots to grow in even deeper. And may we walk steadily, knowing that the earth beneath us remembers everything we've done and everything that we've become. May we leave a legacy worth living for those who are going to encounter Uranus in the sign of Taurus in about 8 decades from now. That's it for today. Sending you much love. Till next time.